Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to the show. This is Anthony.
And this is James. And today's a very special episode. We got an advanced screening of Dune at IMAX, and it was phenomenal. And this episode's actually brought to you by IMAX, so thanks so much for partnering with us. And this is going to be a spoiler-free review of Dune because it's not released yet. It will be released in a few days
in
globally,
America,
in the UK and everywhere else in Canada. So we want to give everyone a chance to see it without spoiling it, but we're going to talk about everything that went into the movie in terms of what we can spoiler-free, and especially the IMAX aspect of the film.
And if you've been listening to our show for the last year, we've been hyping up Dune for a very long time, and you know how giddy we've been, how excited we've been to see this film. We've read the book. We really love the story, and Denis Villeneuve is one of our favorite directors, and he made what we think is a modern masterpiece in Blade Runner 2049. And, you know, Dune, seeing it in IMAX on that giant screen with that sound, it was a stunning achievement in filmmaking, and I was just absolutely awestruck with what Denis Villeneuve, his cast and crew did with this film.
Yeah, and at the end of this episode of this review, we will be announcing our winners for our IMAX ticket giveaway. We're giving away 10 sets of tickets, so 20 total. Each winner wins a pair of tickets. You'll get a Fandango coupon code to go see Dune whenever IMAX theaters near you.
And we had a lot of entrants. We made a drawing earlier, so now we're going to announce it at the end of this episode. So listen to this whole podcast episode and you'll find out if you are a lucky winner.
And I'm sure we'll go back to Dune later on throughout the show over time because we want to get more in-depth analysis, but we want to again keep this spoiler free. But for me, Dune was a dream. It was everything that I wanted and more. Being a huge fan of the books and of Denis Villeneuve, who I think now you could say is definitely a master at tackling these futuristic worlds, interplanetary travel now, because Blade Runner in the future, and then even Arrival you could say is some futuristic world. And then with Dune, he's just a master of that right now, and he's a rare director where he's just so artistic, so he's a genius. And I was so curious about so many aspects of what Dune would be like on the big screen with his interpretation. And he just knocked every aspect of it out of the park.
Yeah, what makes him special is he brings the art to big budget sci-fi, which has not been done too often, especially in the last couple of decades. And, you know, he made Blade Runner's sequel, which many thought would be impossible to make work. And you could argue that it is a better movie than the original Blade Runner. It's absolutely fantastic. And then with Dune, you know, it had a storied history of development hell. David Lynch made an adaptation that was not received very well, and honestly didn't do the book justice. And so no one wanted to touch Dune for a long time, and a few filmmakers took stabs at it, and just nothing came from it. But once Denis was announced as the filmmaker, I felt confident that he would be able to pull it off after what he did with Blade Runner. And what he did with this was really monumental in terms of the filmmaking, the craftsmanship involved, as well as translating this complicated story to mainstream audiences. And they did a great job of filling people who are unknown, who don't know about this story. It's pretty easy to follow. This story has an intense amount of detail to it, characters, you know, a whole history of its own. And they really did a great job of filling the audience in, getting them up to speed really quickly so that once the story takes off, even people who haven't read the books are along for the ride.
And I know we hype up a lot of movies on the show because we love film, but this one is magnificent. You know, this is cinema. It's remarkable. It's imaginative. It's massive, you know, because Dune was designed, dreamed, and shot for IMAX experience. And if there's ever a film since the pandemic to show the importance of film in theaters, it's Dune. And when you're in IMAX watching this movie, which we really highly recommend you go to watch it, because Denis and his DP cinematographer Greg Fraser, they used only IMAX cameras, and so it's designed to be seen that way, and the theater will shake. And thanks to IMAX, I think that Dune, for me personally, was one of the most immersive film experiences I've ever had in my entire life. It's like this when we saw Dunkirk in 70mm film projection, then like Interstellar when we saw that in IMAX. You're entering a whole new world and universe, especially in this film. And the IMAX footage, which is enormous, it shows just astounding imagery that they really captured in a bunch of different locations. This film, it really feels alive, and I'm telling you, you won't have the same experience if you're in a regular theater, and not even close to the same experience if you're watching at home on HBO Max.
Yeah, and that's the reason why Chris Nolan has been slowly putting more IMAX footage into his movies over the past 10 years. J.J. Abrams started doing it with the Star Wars movies. What the IMAX footage does is it's the highest resolution you can make for a film. So think about Call of Duty 10 years ago and compare it to Call of Duty now. the resolution is incredible, and the size of the footage is much larger. There's more information, so when you're watching it on this gigantic screen, the reason why it is immersive is because the image is so sharp. There's so much more detail, plus the screen is monumentally big, and that really immerses you into the film-going experience. Because the screen is so large, you have to like move your head a little bit to see different things that are going on in the frame because of how massive it is, and that it like wraps around your entire viewpoint, and it feels like you're inside that world with these characters, with these larger-than-life things happening, and no other film-going experience can ever duplicate that. IMAX is the ultimate version.
Yeah, it's like floor-to-ceiling, wall-to-wall, entire frame being covered. Not the entire movie was shot with IMAX footage, but you can notice the aspect ratio when it changes from widescreen to the full frame of the IMAX. And the difference between IMAX and standard is that IMAX, like you said, is the ultimate high resolution of what it is, 70 millimeter film instead of the 35 millimeter, which is what we normally see. So you're getting literally an extra movie while you're watching this movie. It's 40% more image. And I'm telling you, especially with a movie like Dune, where you're creating new worlds, you're on different planets, and not to mention the incredible cinematography that they captured on all these different locations. You know, they shot this all over the world. They were in Budapest, Jordan, Norway, Abu Dhabi, and all these different locations. They act as the major backdrop of Arrakis, or Dune, which is the planet that the most of the film takes place on. And really, the IMAX footage and the scale and the frame, it really makes you feel like you're there, especially in these new planets and new worlds, and because they really shot it like that.
And in terms of making a gigantic sci-fi film, you would expect there to be a lot of CGI, and you would expect so much, green screen. But the way Denis films, and he did this with Blade Runner as well, is a lot of what you're seeing was practical, miniatures, actually building these sets. I didn't notice a shot at all where there was green screen used. I couldn't tell of anything. I'm sure there were a couple here and there, but for me, it looked as though everything was really built and tangible. Even the ships, like if someone's stepping off a ship, obviously the entire ship isn't real, but they built the entire hangar and the platform of the ship that goes down, so the cast is actually walking down, a futuristic-looking spaceship hangar, and so then they'll probably CGI the rest of the ship in the background. But I think Denis does a terrific job, like Chris Nolan, of adding as much practicality into his filmmaking as possible. Greg Fraser did an excellent job of shooting this as well, and in terms of the CGI, because there is plenty of CGI, it looks absolutely stunning. It looks so realistic. Many of these shots of these massive ships moving in and out of areas, especially the Atreides ships, their fleet coming out of the water, I was absolutely stunned. And Denis is a patient filmmaker where he's like, this is an experience. I want to do a minute of you watching this gigantic ship come out of this ocean, because it immerses you into that world.
Honestly, it looks so good and real in IMAX and massive that I wouldn't be surprised if it's practical in a miniature. I don't know. I couldn't tell, but that's how real it looks. That, yeah, there is CGI, but you'd be surprised how little CGI there actually is. In this movie, it's so ambitious. It's enormous in scope, and it's a rarity among blockbusters that we get something like this, a masterclass and a masterpiece in filmmaking with a huge budget. It's beautiful. It's intense. Again, it's going to suck you into this new world. And again, I'm kind of in disbelief how much he got in from the book into the movie, because it's like you said earlier, it's a very complex film. It's a story, very complex book. The book is 700 plus pages, and the movie will cut off around the 450, 500 page mark before it goes into part two. So part one ends it, again, 475 pages around for one movie. So you have to stuff in a ton of stuff. But I think that Denis was able to consolidate this complex story to make it understandable and comprehensible with minimal and effective exposition in the early first act of the film.
Yeah, he did a remarkable job, because especially with Paul's character, which is the character that Timothée Chalamet plays, he's going through transformations. He's not a normal person. He has things about him that, are kind of, you could say, supernatural in a way, and, the spice is enhancing that as well. So there's a lot of complicated backstory in terms of who Paul Atreides is, what is happening to him, And you know what these abilities that are growing within him are, how he uses them and how he can use them in the future. And at times he's using them without even trying to or knowing he is. So I think that they did an amazing job of translating that onto the screen for new viewers, as well as capturing like this spirituality / supernatural blend of genres that Herbert put into this film. I mean, the story.
Yeah, and again, visually, one of the most stunning films I've seen since Interstellar. It's like up there. I think it blew me away more than Interstellar. And I was so curious how Denis would visualize things in the book in terms of like the body shields for combat, which you get glimpses of in the trailer, but to see it used to in a large extent like they do in the book and the film was amazing. The spice, aka the melange, the ornithopters, which are like these dragonfly ships that they fly around Arrakis, and their wings are like they're like dragonfly wings. They're really cool. Mentats in terms of the human computers that all the houses have. The Bene Gesserit, which is that religious the spiritual female cult that kind of runs the politics of the universe and the galaxy. The still suits, whether they be the Arrakis made or the Fremen made still suits, the Thumpers, the Guild Highliners, the Baron, especially Baron Harkonnen, who's the main villain in the film. You get glimpses of him in the trailer, but I was so curious how Denis was going to capture him in a bunch of scenes like he's supposed to be in, especially his anti-gravitational suspenders, which are heavily described in the film. Everything in the book that Denis translated into the film was done perfectly compared to what my imagination was whenever I read these books.
Yeah, and on top of that, you had one of the most astounding scores by Hans Zimmer. And if you know our show, you know how much we fanboy on Hans Zimmer. He's our guy.
Big time.
You know what I mean? And we listen to his music more than anything. And he always seems to surprise me, but with Dune, he did something really special, this blend of music where, you know, he composed these amazing vocal feats and combining that with, you know, his typical use of percussion, but he made this amazing rhythm that ended up being like one of the main themes of the movie, like this really great percussion moment. And then combining that, you know, with his electronics synth, again with the full orchestra here and there, but a lot of guitar, and as well as a lot of instruments that you can find in Middle Eastern countries and cultures. Then what he did with this score was really remarkable. From the moment the movie starts, after the opening logos, like his music gets you right into it, and you're like, oh my God, what is going to happen?
Yeah, it's so experimental. I definitely think it's probably in his top 10 for sure. Like, I think Interstellar is probably still going to always be my favorite Hans Zimmer score, but this is something I never heard ever before in my life, just like with Interstellar. That was so new to me. And I think the importance of IMAX works so well in so many different areas of this film. Of course, the desert, which is heavily featured in this film when you're on an entire planet, Arrakis, Dune, that is an entire desert. They have so much beautiful cinematography in all these different real locations, and it shows just the impact of the soul of the desert on the soul of the film, the soul of the characters. Also, we're on different planets like Caladan, which is where the Atreides were originally holding their fort, basically their fief, their control of that planet, which was a water planet. Then the planet of Arrakis or Dune. Getty Prime, which is where the Harkonnens, their head of operations are. Seleucus Secundus, which is the Emperor's basically army planet. All looked incredible in IMAX on the large, enormous formatting. The spacecraft, the ornithopters, again, were super cool, but also even like the Highliner crafts that were over space, which is how they travel basically from one point of the galaxy to the other instantly, were huge, and I couldn't even picture anything like that in my life.
Yeah.
And also the technology in this world, because it's kind of like analog mixed with like,
it's like biology and technology have blended together in ways,
because there's no more computers.
Yeah.
So it's also very analog at the same time, and there's epic battles in this film too. The combat is really cool because Paul Atreides, he's been trained his entire life in the ways of the Bene Gesserit, which his mother is a member of. He's also been trained by a Mentat, who is a supercomputer his entire life, a human computer his entire life. And then he's also been trained by Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck, who are two of the greatest warriors in the entire universe, for his entire life. So he's a highly skilled person. And to see like the skill that went into his combat, we get a couple of great shots of that, and seeing Timothée Chalamet pull off some cool moves.
And the sound design in this movie is really excellent. And combining that with Hans Zimmer's music, you know, there's some incredible sequences in this film which, you know, blow you away. And one of the benefits of the IMAX theater is their unique sound system, the 12.1 channel, 15,000 watt digital speakers. And what it does is you're going to hear things in an IMAX theater that you would never hear in another theater.
The frequency range is huge, so that's what that means.
It allows
you're hearing so much more sound.
It allows so much detail, and you know the paintbrushes of the artist, like every stroke is heard on these speakers, and it makes all the difference in the world. You and I always say that, sound is actually the most important part of a form of media, whether it be a movie or a podcast. If it sounds bad, it can take you out of the experience, whereas great sound mixing, great sound design, and an excellent score can really pull you into a film.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, you'll hear things in an IMAX theater you will never hear in a theater.
It shakes you to your core.
It literally shakes the entire...
Yeah.
Your seats are shaking. It's amazing.
Yeah.
The production design of this film is also exceptional. These impossibly huge sets with tremendous amounts of practical detail. The artists that were working on this movie are so talented. It's incredible. I mean, because again, we're on so many different planets. We have so many different cultures going on. We have different houses of the universe, like compared to the Harkonnens versus the Atreides, completely different designs. And the wardrobe of the Atreides, the Bene Gesserits, it's so fascinating. The warriors, the Fremen, and the still suits, not to mention the sandworms, shai-hulud, who are the massive beings on this planet Arrakis, and they're responsible for the production of, or the creation of, the spice, the melange, which is the most valuable resource in the entire universe, because not only does it extend life and powers to people like premonition, but it also makes the instantaneous intergalactic space travel possible.
Because the pilots can see ahead into the future using the spice, where they're going to end up if they go in a certain trajectory.
Exactly.
So it's vital to intergalactic travel. And the cast in this movie is unbelievable. Like, this is one of the most stacked casts you've seen in a long time, right from the lead to the supporting cast. And, Paul Atreides, really great character. And Timothée Chalamet, when he was cast, we were like, yeah, he's perfect. Like, he's ideal as Paul Atreides. And, Oscar Isaac, you have Rebecca Ferguson, Jason Momoa. This cast is incredible.
Zendaya, Josh Brolin. We have, who else? We have Javier Bardem as Stilgar, Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron Harkonnen. It's a ridiculously stacked cast. There are like 20 incredible actors. Sharon Duncan Brewster as Leah Kynes, Dave Bautista as Rabin, Chen Cheng as Dr. Yue. Who else we have? Yeah, I think that's pretty much most of the main cast.
I think that
Stephen McKinley Henderson for Howard. It's stacked.
And I would say, Rebecca Ferguson really, I think stood out as the best performer of this movie. She really knocked her role out of the park. It's a challenging role. Her character goes through a lot of intense moments. Her son, his life's always at risk, and he's also changing. And, there's a lot at stake. These people, they go through great trials and tribulations, and I think Rebecca Ferguson really did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, well, Lady Jessica, you could say, is the co-lead of this movie after Paul, because it's like that in the book, too. She has a ton to do. She's being exiled with Paul throughout the film, and she is the concubine of Duke Leto Atreides, played by Oscar Isaac. They never got married because she is not of noble blood in the first film we learn. But she is a Bene Gesserit, which, again, is this spiritualistic sisterhood of these women who basically for thousands and thousands of years have been controlling the universe politically and through bloodlines. And Paul Atreides is a direct result of the control of those bloodlines, and he has two prophesized destinies, and he fulfills one of them throughout the story.
Yeah, and this movie, if you aren't sure about like what it looks like to you, the best way to sum it up is this is Game of Thrones in space. So Game of Thrones meets Star Wars.
Kind of, yeah. But more complicated.
It's a much more complicated, but that's like the dumb version of what Dune is. And Dune, it's an old story. It was written 70 years ago, and it influenced sci-fi. It's still to this day. And, there are moments of this film, and you might look at this and be like, oh, I've seen that in, Star Wars, or I've seen that in another movie, but this was first. You know what I mean? Star Wars borrowed from this. There wouldn't be a Star Wars if Dune hadn't been written. So this is one of the most original stories ever crafted, especially in the sci-fi genre, but all as a whole in literature. Herbert had a fascinating imagination, and he crafted something really, truly, wholly original. And, the entire sci-fi genre owes a lot to Dune. And so this was a big film to get made. It's important, I think, in the history of cinema and the genre of sci-fi.
Yeah, and again, it's so perfectly cast. I mean, Timothée Chalamet is Paul Atreides. I've read the book 3 times, and I honestly couldn't picture somebody else doing the role. He's perfect, and it's a very subtle and nuanced performance, just like the character in the book. He plays it just like I picture in my head whenever I read it. And not to mention Zendaya, she's a huge star as well. So you have 2 huge stars in this movie besides everyone else. Zendaya plays Chani, who is one of the Fremen, but it takes a while in the book and the movie for the Atreides to get to Arrakis after the Emperor takes the Harkonnens away from the control of it and puts the Atreides in there to take control of the planet Dune and Arrakis for the Emperor. And I think some people might be a little disappointed with how little Zendaya is going to be in this film because she's kind of marketed as a big part of the film, and I understand that that's what studios are doing. You know, we have to get as many people in seats, and Zendaya is a huge star, so we're gonna market her. But you know, that's the way it plays in the book. She's actually in a decent amount in the movie than I thought she'd be. You know, she's featured heavily in a lot of Paul's visions that he has early on before he gets to Arrakis, and then they get stronger as he's on Arrakis because of the spice. But Chani has a huge role to play in the second Part 2 film, so she'll be a major player in Dune Part 2 when that films and comes out.
Yeah, exactly. And Greg Fraser has quickly become one of my favorite cinematographers.
Same.
He's Damien Chazelle's cinematographer. So he shot First Man, La La Land, Whiplash, and he has really great artistic visions, great integrity in, you know, making great imagery combined with minimalist imagery. Like there are shots where, you know, there's not much lighting at all, and he combines naturalistic, raw lighting that you would see in everyday life, and then you'll see that contrasted with intense sci-fi action sequences with like the most insane set pieces you've ever seen. So it's a complicated thing to do to pull this off, and I think the vision he crafted in this film is in line with what Denis usually has for his films, and, you know, really blew me away in terms of how to capture these set pieces, how to capture these characters. I was just astounded by his DP work.
Yeah, Greg Fraser, he's an incredible cinematographer. He also did Rogue One. He did The Batman, and we all just saw that trailer a dozen times, I'm sure, and the aesthetic and the visuals of that film are some of the best I've seen in years, especially for a superhero comic book movie. It looks like the coolest superhero movie ever made visually, you know, the shots that they're getting and the artistic vision they have. And Denis Villeneuve works with very talented cinematographers, and I think some people were disappointed that he wasn't working with Roger Deakins on this film. He worked with Roger Deakins on Blade Runner 2049. He got an Oscar for that, for cinematography. He also worked with him on Sicario and Prisoners as well. And then in Arrival, he worked with Bradford Young, who did a tremendous job on that film as well. So I think Denis knows the power of cinematography and how important it is to have a very talented one, especially one working with IMAX cameras. Because, yeah, anyone can use a huge frame camera and film to get some cool imagery, but to use it to your advantage and get the right shots that fit that format for when you're in the theater watching this enormous scale frame, to do it the right way. And Greg Fraser is very talented when it comes to filming in regular and IMAX cameras.
Yeah, so the craftsmanship of this film is the top of the top. You know, these are the best artists in the world of filmmaking. And, you know, you got Hans Zimmer, then Greg Fraser, the production designer is excellent. You know, the best cast money can pay for. And, you know, Warner Brothers went full in on this movie. I respect them for that, because it's not something that, you know, mainstream audiences are clamoring to see. You know, there's no superheroes in this. There's no Transformers robots in this. You know, this is not what we typically see for blockbusters nowadays. And you know what? I think that you got to give it to them. They were like, let's do Dune. Let's just make it as best as we can. Throw a lot of money on it. Do it the right way this time and see what happens. And I really do think that, you know, this isn't going to be the biggest box office hit in the world, but I do think that audiences are going to gravitate to this in a big way, and this will go down as a really loved movie.
Yeah, I really hope people go to see this in theaters, go see it in IMAX. It really is one of those experiences that you seldom have, even in theaters. It's like, in the last 10 years, it's like top 3 for me for sure. It's like this and some other, like Dunkirk when we saw it in 70 millimeter. It's just a rare experience to have, and you have a director like Denis Villeneuve, who I couldn't imagine anybody else tapping to do this project. I couldn't imagine Nolan, anyone. I couldn't picture a single person besides Denis Villeneuve doing this adaptation and doing it the right way, because he is such an amazing vision as a director.
And I was so blown away, and I was so awestruck by the experience of seeing it on this giant IMAX screen that I want to see it again as soon as possible, because I was so just enthralled, and I need to see this at least 3 times
I didn't
in the
want
next
it to end.
month. You know, exactly. Yeah, once it ended, I was like astounded, but I was like, oh man, it's over. I want to keep going.
And the cliffhanger, it's not really the cliffhanger they're leaving you on. It's just like unanswered questions. So it's not like an episode of Game of Thrones. You're like, what's going to happen? It's well, because I know what's going to happen, so I probably look at it differently. They ended it pretty much where I expected them to, where it makes sense to stop this film to continue with the part 2 to get like a good story going for another film. But I was more than satisfied when we saw this film. Astounding filmmaking. It's it's just everything I wanted and more, and I can't recommend it enough. And we'll go way more in depth when we do a full analysis of this film, and we'll wait a few months for everybody to see it because we don't want to spoil it for you all. We want you all to listen to our review of it, and hopefully it gets you hyped up and gets you excited. Don't listen to some of these bad reviews that are coming out, even though it's like 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's still reviews coming out there and critics saying that it's too long, it's too slow, it's laggy. It's like it's a 700-page book. You can't make a 10-hour movie with constant action. We have to get a lot of things in there. It's a very complex story, and I think just people, if you have the patience, like get patience back in your life. Watch an amazing 2.5-hour movie. Turn the phone off. Don't worry about how long it is. It's long, but I'm telling you, it will fly by because mostly of the acting, the directing, and the visuals.
And if you liked Blade Runner 2049, if you think that is a great film, you will adore this movie as well.
And I'm telling you, if there's any medium to watch 450-foot giant sandworms on camera, it's IMAX. So you got to see that for sure.
Oh yeah, big time.
Shai-hulud. All right, thanks so much for listening to this review. But now, and thanks to IMAX for sponsoring this and sending us to see this movie because it was our most anticipated movie for 4 years. As soon as we started,
for a long
pre-production,
time.
3 years. So it was just an incredible experience. Thanks so much. We're now going to announce the winners, the 10 winners of our IMAX ticket giveaway. Each one of these people, they will get 2 tickets. So you'll get a Fandango code, which you can use at any redeemable IMAX, and you'll have to do it digitally.
And we had hundreds of comments in our video, so thank you to all of our fans for subscribing to our YouTube channel, which is very helpful for the show.
Yeah, it was 700 entries or something like that?
Yeah, and then also for making a comment, and we're happy to help give back to our fans with contests like this. So here it is. This is the 10 winners of the Dune IMAX ticket giveaway. So we got Jayke Franco, Bubba 818483, Rain IcePop, I like that one, Kyle, Jack JAC, Farhaan and Friends, Omer Berk, Nikki Biernacki, Preston, and Gaby Lopez. Congratulations, everyone.
And we'll post a video tomorrow of us filming the entries as we selected them so everyone can know it was done fairly and we did it in one take. So those are the 2 authentic real winners. We used a random name generator that you put in a YouTube link and it selects however many winners you want to choose. It does it automatically for you. And it was super easy. So congrats to everyone who won. We will get into contact with you winners and we'll get in contact with IMAX and we'll get the coupon codes for Fandango for you to redeem digitally at any IMAX near you. Congratulations. Thanks, IMAX, so much for sponsoring this episode and this giveaway for us.
And we have a lot more we have many more contests coming your way, so don't worry if you didn't win this time. Keep an eye out for future ones. And for everyone who won, congratulations. Thank you for tuning into the show. You deserve it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Raiders of the Lost podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you're new. Hit the like button, leave a comment. Find us on all audio streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us. Find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Raiders of the Lost podcast. Be sure to check out one of these other videos right here for more content on our favorite films and breaking down all kinds of movie content. Thanks so much.